the question was, what was the question? Oh,
Yeah, you kicked me for it, prick!
so the general question was, should billionaires exist? And so, obviously, with a billionaire, you have a lot of responsibility. I mean, you have a lot of power, a lot of influence, obviously a lot of money. And so, I was bringing this up to Noah, and I said, in this hypothetical situation, I said, say you have someone with $40 billion in their account.
Oh yeah, you the 3 9
40 billion, yeah, and you take 39.1 billion or whatever, and they still have like 900 million or whatever, right?
Mhm.
And that 900 million, I mean, that's more money than anyone could spend in their lifetime. Even if you're trying to spend it, it would be so hard. The sheer quantity of that money would just be,
Impossible to get rid of.
it'd be impossible
Almost
to get rid of.
nearly impossible.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so, so the question was, they would still be undoubtedly filthy rich. And you're taking this $39.1 billion and you are investing it back into, like, the community. You're helping the poor, you're helping the disabled, the elderly. You're building public projects. Is that okay? Should that be allowed? Should that be done? Or should these billionaires who have earned their money rightfully, like Jeff, what is his? How do I pronounce it? Bezos?
Jeff Bezos, the creator of
Bezos,
Amazon.
Yeah, the CEO of Amazon. That is such an innovative idea. Okay, we're back. Okay, sorry about that. There we go.
No, you're good.
Bezos.
Bezos.
Yep.
Mhm.
Bezos undoubtedly earned that money. Like, Amazon is such an innovative, genius idea. He earned what is he at? 120, 130 billion or something like that. He earned that money.
Absurd.
He earned it undoubtedly.
Mhm.
But we can take a lot of that away, and he would still be filthy rich. So should we?
Yeah.
I think that's a massive.
We should
question.
absolutely keep him.
Sorry, you kind of cut out.
We need to keep him.
Okay, so I would like you to explain your reasoning, and I'm not saying I disagree. I would just
Right.
like to
So
get,
essentially, the best way to envision it and why I believe we should keep billionaires is simply because of the idea that, as of now, and this has been a problem, where there was a toll, and you have Evans and so does Noah, so you guys can immediately grab the reach. As well as I believe Garza was doing. So there is like legitimate evidence, and it's not going off of pure like theoreticals or whatever. There are tests and there are things where certain people of this age or the oncoming like generation, because you did mention our generation eventually, we as people, we kind of like grew up in hardship, and now America's kind of not flourishing, but it is steady growth. It is cultivating more power and more responsibilities, and within those responsibilities are typically limitations that people would use not as hindrance, but like more of a way to innovate yourself and work around those. But now, if we took billionaires' money, and they are still filthy rich, but because of them taking money and it goes into all these foundations, a lot of people now are going to envision it as, well, now that the government has this abundance of money, we don't really have to do anything. And
Yeah, no,
I believe
laziness. Yeah, I
Right.
thought.
No,
This
and
was
I
where
think
you were going.
right, but that's not even that. What, as Americans, right, and we live and we talk about a democracy, right? It's like the laissez-faire. We mandate our own government, and that's what makes us so unique across from the whole world. And then we talk about this individualism, and we have so many like patriotic people. It would go against like a lot of the constitutional laws and just a sense of morality if we were to take someone's money away, even if they like got it from a majority of people. If the money's still entitled to him, we have no merit to take it. And I feel like people are very scared of that power. You're not wrong about that. But they don't have the ability to take it away simply because they don't have it, or it can help a lot of people. And a lot of those people, typically, regardless, they do donate to charity, because what the hell are they going to do with that money? But that's like being sidetracked. What I'm trying to get at is that we don't really need to take from them because they never really took from us. And it's kind of in the sense where we're talking about, oh yeah, well, people's rights and this and that. Isn't it his right to keep his own money? And if you change and it's all about perspective. If you were filthy rich, and people are trying to take it down. It's like, no, I've earned all of this. So why do I have to like do it? It's all like based on perspective. And if you were to flip the table or give everyone that same like side of the table, no one would decline it. No one would be like, oh, or no one would go along with it. They'd be like, oh yeah, here, let me just give you money, because one, they already kind of do that event. Like if you had that much money, you probably would give money to foundations, but you wouldn't give it to the government, nor like all of it to the foundations.
Well,
if anything, well, go ahead.
No. Well, I just wanted to touch on a few points, and so it's gonna be a while for me. So you can go ahead and finish your initial thought there.
No, because you know how I build off. So go ahead.
Okay. I want to just touch on a few points. The first point was the laissez-faire system of our government that you kind of mentioned there, and while you're right, that is typically what we do. I will say that if you look at American history, there has never been like a truly notable laissez-faire president. Who are the presidents that we remember? They are
A lot of
radicals. Radically right or radically left, it doesn't matter. Just radicals. Abraham Lincoln, total radical. You look at FDR and Teddy Roosevelt, total radicals. They were not laissez-faire. And so while laissez-faire is good for business and good for, in some senses, very good for economy, it is unremarkable as a whole. And when you, I think as a society, when you get into a trend of unremarkability, you die as a society. You need to keep things moving forward, and you need to keep things unique and different as a society, or your society means nothing. That was just my one point that I just kind of wanted to get out there and just want you guys to consider. What was the other? Oh shit! The other thing I was gonna say. What?
Josh, I don't know if you want to do that. I'm in the sky.
Nice, Noah. I was gonna say, Josh, you mentioned them donating to various charities, and you're right, but they donate to these charities, and if you actually look at the charities they donate, and you backtrack and you see who these charities were set up by, it was set up by the same people.
Yeah, most of the
like
time.
a lot of the time they're donating to charity, and you can't see this, but I'm doing heavy air quotations, but they're actually just donating to themselves. And so it's a way to trick the government into being like, look at how nice I'm being, I'm donating all this money, blah 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 blah. But in reality, they're not really donating it, they're moving it to various assets. And I'm not saying all billionaires do that, and I'm not saying their charities are illegitimate either, because some billionaires have set up charities and they've proven to be very, very effective and good.
I mean, look at what's his name, LeBron James over here opening a whole school, like promising futures in Akron, Ohio.
Oh, did he?
Yes, no,
Yep.
I didn't hear about that.
He got a college to basically allow his senior graduating class from that school to have free college tuition and like expenses paid, just the first class, you know, just to like celebrate the opening of it. But he still used his millions to make a difference, with no cost coming back to him, you know.
Totally, yeah, and so some, sometimes they do good things, but other times, you will have that rotten apple that launders in or participates in illegal activities.
Zuckerberg.
Zuckerberg is, he's a lizard for sure. he's a little questionable though, but and that's just something I wanted to touch upon, because it's easy to say they're doing all this donations to charities and it makes them good, when in reality, if you take a harder peek at it, they're not really donating so much as just moving the money around. So that was just kind of, I just wanted to touch on those two things to kind of expand upon what you were saying. But go ahead if you had anything else to.
Yeah, no, but I mean, with that I can agree, but it's all like it's just dependent on someone's, I guess, morality. And although that is so fickle, and to rely on something such as like one person's like doing, that's something you never want to depend on if you are trying to run a government. But then if I were to take so much money and put it to the government or whatever charity it may be, it's just eventually going to come back to me, and segments of it fall off and go to people. But those segments are so abnormal that people view it as more of like something that they didn't earn, but it's something like, oh, cool, it's like a mandated right. It's something that we are given because we as citizens earned it. No, we don't. But here's a good thing about it is the fact that there are billionaires give not only certain countries more like a higher point of vision, but that's weird to go off of. So what I'm saying is, if we were to extract their money,
Hmm.
then there would be no reasoning to make money, because if we did take their money away, it's easily susceptible to confuse people into saying, well, what if I actually had a negotiable business, or what if something I had some form of value, although not in the billions. It raises a question: how much value does something actually have to be before it can be taken away from you? And that's scary.
That's a good point. And yeah, going off of that, I mean, if you are a billionaire, or say you just became a billionaire, and then you had that stripped away of you, that title, which obviously carries quite a hefty significance to it, then what would really be the point of, say, expanding your company? Like, if I owned Amazon, and I became a billionaire, and suddenly I wasn't because the government said no, then I'd be like, so what's my incentive to carry on with this company that is helping millions of people, but apparently it's stopped helping myself? Why would I do this, for purely selfless reasons?
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
So, that's a good
Josh,
point.
look at chat.
Yeah, no, I read it. You could have fun with that. No, and that's the entire way I'm trying to envision it. It's very strange because it would raise the question. And here's the thing: we as just like people in general, we do aim to achieve higher, or at least reach a pinnacle. Not at the very highest, but or at least reach a state where we don't really have to worry about anything at the bottom. That's why we elevate in the first place. And for stuff to crawl back and grab us in the leg and pull us down, that's horrid. That is such a terrible way to live life. The fact that you're successful just being nullified,
Hmm.
and it leaves the question: if you were to better yourself and if you were to gain more, and they get stripped away, where would the idea that bettering yourself is good not only for you but for all that? People strive, if you talk to kids or something, it's like, oh, I want to be rich, I want to be a millionaire, this and that. But if they learn about the incentive of the government to take that money, then why would you even drive? So not only is it, oh, well, I'm not going to strive for that amount of money, if we are uncertain about the exact amount of value it's going to take regardless, then why would we work for anything? And it slowly drives itself to be more a socialist idea where it's the government's thing that it can fix, but it's not, subjugated to us. So now we play victim and we sit still while everything occurs. And it's really bad to envision it that way, where any hard work you do, as long as it has merit or value, we can take it. Now, hard work isn't to show that wherever you're from, you can do it, and it's vanity. It's I can do it. I can show it off because you worked hard. It's going to be stolen, and not only that, it's legalized, and it's such a terrible. Yes, it helps people in the lower thing, but it just negates rights. And then if something goes against our constitution, we're gonna have to hold stuff against it. So I believe keeping billionaires in their suitable location, yes, tiers above us, if you want to view it as that, but they are pillars nonetheless, and they're pillars that keep us in place. They're podiums, they're staplers that keep us papers together. They don't do much, but the ability of being existent with so much wealth and value and power. And here's the thing: if you have that much wealth and power, you really don't need to move a finger, because eventually, once you reach the state of so much money, you don't have to lift a finger, because
Yeah.
you still eventually just make more money. So no one with that much power and value really plans on using that power or value to any degree, unless it's almost like a whore thing. Yeah.
I would be careful using it, or saying that in absolute terms, because, well, let's take someone who uses it for good. Let's take someone like Elon Musk, for example, billionaire,
Right.
and uses his billions to fund SpaceX and Tesla and stuff like that. And, and so clearly Elon Musk has his billions. He could sit and live the rest of his life in peaceful solitude, and he chooses to use it for the greater good, but he chooses to use it nonetheless. And so the question becomes, how much longer until we have someone that chooses to be the anti-Elon, if you will, and chooses to use his billions for
Weaponization.
for I
like
don't know, World War III.
just his own entertainment without consideration for others.
Yeah.
Right, but laws nullify that. That's why I believe that.
No. The billionaires are above the laws. We've seen this in multiple cases.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
We
If
have
you
corruption.
have money,
Yes, I understand that.
you can
but
bribe
keep
anyone.
in mind, if you're a billionaire, let's say this, you're a billionaire, are you not under a telescope?
You
I'm
are.
magnifying
Yeah,
glass.
no,
Right.
you are on, like, especially with social media and such.
Especially
Yeah.
social
Yeah, no, a billionaire could end up putting themselves against the world. Like, imagine a billionaire versus a certain country, like a World War III, where it's billionaires versus not countries themselves fighting each other. It's
It's the wealthy
billionaires.
against
The wealthy
waging a
versus
conquest.
government. Yeah, no, like a conquest by those with higher status.
Uh-huh.
And like imagine that being like that is what the war would be. Instead of, country versus country, which everyone thinks World War III will be, like there's a possibility it won't be that. It could be higher statuses versus the lower classes, and in that point, do the government side with us, or do, like, it's hard to tell where the line stands.
I mean, to me, it seems as though anyone can be bought. And so that's why you have billionaires that are above the law. And when a billionaire becomes above the law and uses his billions for more or less, for lack of a better term, I hate using this absolute as well, but for more or less evil, if you will, ways and reasons, then, who stops him?
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
so
keep in
there's
mind-
a possibility. There's a possibility that when you have a billionaire, eventually, it's gonna be someone crazy with these billions, and something bad is gonna happen. I mean, look at Jeffrey Epstein and his child sex island. That was pretty bad,
Definitely.
And who's saying that kind of stuff is probably happening all around the world, and we aren't thinking about it. Jeffrey Epstein is just one case. That stuff is
Yep.
probably happening everywhere.
Yep.
Definitely.
But I feel that is extraordinarily valid. I understand that. But the way I envision it is now social media is cracking down an excessive amount. And here's the thing. As much as we antagonize, people get offended too easily, it does beg the question. If you get offended too easily, is it you trying to defend people, or are you just being cautious? And people still don't know how to answer that. But the good thing to come out of all the amount of negativity is that people are put more in a scope, so it does restrain their actions. If you, a billionaire, were to cross the law, you with that wealth have been placed under a magnifying glass. You have been envisioned and you're being viewed. Now it's a value of what matters more, what has more power, the people who run the government or the money that lets the government run. And it's a value of, it's just a testimony to how well having someone in that power and not doing anything really balances it out. Here's the thing. If the millionaire were to do that and the public does figure out, which is more probable than not, is that when the public figures it out and they all see it, there's going to be an outcry. And the government that we quote-unquote have will not longer be a government, but just a house to the billionaire. Therefore, they have no more power over the people because the government is more like that. And if the government, let's use the U.S. more of an example, is that the U.S. is heavily dependent on people. That's what makes it so different from like the rest of the world. But it feels to me as if enough... That's badass, sorry. If enough people rose awareness, and it's like, there's a lot of charities and funds. It's like, oh, well, we got to do this for this cause. If the entirety of the nation was under this one cause, how much money or how much value would the money have?
What do you
That's
mean?
what I believe.
What do you mean by that?
money. Okay, you know how money works. We
Yeah,
place
yeah. So
our
you
trust
place
in
the
it.
value. Oh, okay. So you're saying as an
Money would
nation,
have no value. The
if we
only reason why
decide,
money
yeah,
has value is because we entrust
Choose to
it to
put
have
them.
value.
yeah, yeah.
If we were to
Yeah.
diminish
Oh, okay. So
dollar bills,
you're taking an interesting take on this. So are you essentially saying that we can, as a nation, stop billionaires by denouncing monetary value? Essentially.
Yeah, no, no, no. Like,
exactly.
think
Yeah,
about
but
it now.
that's
Like,
an
the
interesting
gold
take.
standard is no longer a thing. There's nothing backing our money. They're just pieces of paper that we choose to put value in.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what worth is there besides the worth that the people that, are higher up say there is?
Yeah.
Unless people on a mass scale believe that this money is worthless, it doesn't change anything. Like, there's still going to be people who want to buy things and change things, and that's where it comes up to them to decide whether or not they want to have currency, and decide whether or not they put value into it. And if they do, then good for them. But if we were to get rid of it, then we would have to reduce our days back to bartering and trading and things of crafts. Actually producing things with our own hands and trading them for something of equal or less value.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, nothing would be mass produced. Nothing. Jobs would become very well. Not they wouldn't disappear, but they would be on a very like a smaller scale, because
Yeah.
think about it. You wouldn't have factories or assembly lines of people working because there is no higher up. You're trading, and it comes to no benefit to you to trade things that will only benefit your superiors. You can make these things by yourself. So what is the point in being employed by another person? Yes, your service is worth something, and if your services are being traded, like for time. Basically, if your time is being traded for an item or an object, then that makes sense. But otherwise, what's the point in having a job?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah, no, that's just the way I try and envision it. Like, here's the thing. Inadvertently, the question at hand gets answered by itself. Because the billionaire will rise... Because billionaires have to be essentially movementless. Because if they do move, the whole world watches it. And as long as you have that amount of power, you don't really need to do much, because you're going to get stuff regardless. If you have that much value to the world, nothing's really going to, go after you. Yeah, assassinations, but we're talking like more political powers and etc. Or not continents, but like countries. People will fear you, and they don't want to get on your wrong side. But because nothing negative has happened to them and nothing positive has happened to the opposing side, they're going to leave you alone. Because if it's working now, then what's the point of changing it to see if it might go back on us? So the fact that they're leaving them alone, and billionaires understand this because they understand the response. Yes, people will go nuts with power, but billionaires also understand. So I believe billionaires get a sense of rationale that a lot of people wouldn't have otherwise, and it makes them very wise people in that sense. And they can just...
I'm a little confused. Just to make sure. So you're basically... Your argument is... billionaires have always been like a thing, so there's really no point in changing it now because it's worked so far, right?
No, that is not. I'm
Okay.
saying there's
Yeah,
no
could you expand?
point to mess with... There's no point to get rid of billionaires, because even if they were to exert power, it would just go back to square one.
What do you mean?
Because here's the thing. Let's say this. David, if a billionaire were able to make a move, and like you said, with malicious intent, and you as a government, as a U.S. citizen, have the right to expend your own opinions, would you or not rally with other people who feel as strongly as you do, complain to the government about it? And the government will have either one option, side with the billionaire, or that. And most likely, because remember, money does make the nation run, but money is not what makes the nation. And that switch on perspective and value is what makes the government a government and not a glorified capital, because we have people in the U.S., meaning that if everyone antagonizes and goes after one person, the government will have no choice but to respond to it. And if they neglect it, then we don't put money on value. And if they do, they get rid of whatever the billionaire is doing. So inadvertently, it just goes back to square one.
I will say that historically speaking, our country swings back and forth. So we can't guarantee whether or not they would side with the billionaires or not.
Right.
I think the current way that the government is set up and the current president, Donald Trump, would side with billionaires. I do think that they would side with where the money is rather than the people.
Yeah.
And that has been the way it has been in the past as well. Typically, the government sides with big business. Your argument earlier with the laissez-faire, that is pretty much contradicting exactly what you're saying now, because laissez-faire is let big business be big business. And so
But to mess with billionaires regardless
Mhm.
would be counterintuitive to the entire purpose of it. So billionaires should remain untouched, and if they do, then we do have to exert some force, because nothing, like you said, because U.S. is so fickle in the matter that we should abide by our laws or not. Keep in mind, so many, not the Constitution, but there's so many laws have been put in place, and then later we revoke or make a law to trump over that one. And at the point, like you're saying, it's fickle, so there's no definitive answer. But if it's that point where you're trying that, yeah, but if you're mandating their rights or you're taking away, and it's not laissez-faire, it's counterintuitive, to even dwell with trying to take the billionaires' money would lead to that. So billionaires should be left untouched, and the laissez-faire just goes on and nothing goes wrong. But if we do try to get rid of billionaires, inadvertently, the cycle that I mentioned is going to happen again. And from there, is it counterintuitive to save your country because you wanted to stick to some law? And I'm not saying that I agree with it, but it is what it is in order for the country to remain in country and not a glorified fight fest with someone who's more wealthy than you.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think in the end, the answer is we just don't. I mean, with this kind of question now, there is no right answer. As with any good question, there is no right answer.
Right.
That's what sparks debate. But and I think we just don't know. We have no way of knowing what the government would do. I have strong suspicions of what the current government would do and who they would side with, and but I mean you're right, and I mean what you're proposing earlier. You basically proposed a nationwide strike against money. If a billionaire were to rise up and take.
Alright, I'm gonna
Take
do
power.
some painting, but I'll still be on the mic.
Okay.
Let me just with all the supplies. So it'll be nice and soothing.
Okay.
All right.
So
Be right back in a sec.
if a billionaire were to take this power and for bad, for evil, whatever, you proposed basically, let's make their money not worth anything. Let's go basically on strike as a nation. Let's all stop working. Let's halt the economy. Let's say no, billionaire, because we are making your billions, so we're gonna.
You're not stopping the economy. You're changing it.
Well, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Because
you can't change the economy overnight. It would have to be stopped in order to be changed.
it would take time.
If a ball is rolling 50 miles an hour in one direction, it doesn't just switch to 50 miles an hour in another direction. It decelerates, it stops, and then you would have to accelerate in the other direction. So there would be a stop.
Right.
So then comes the question. In an economic stop, like total standstill, what would happen to society? Would the government fall? If our economy doesn't run, there is no stock market, there are no investors. It's a Great Depression, except magnified by a million. It's way worse than the Great Depression would ever be or ever was. And so, standing up to billionaires and saying that a nationwide strike to make their money not worth anything, because if we don't back the money, it's not worth anything. That's great. And then you go to the store to buy some bread. Oh, my money's not worth anything. How do I get food? How do I feed my children? How do other people feed their children? And then you can quickly devolve into a state of anarchy. And so I think that that's a very dangerous thought, to think that you can stand up to billionaires by just saying that the money's not worth anything now. And so I think that you have to be a little more open-minded in how that would work, because it's, nothing in the world is ever simple. There's always, there's black, white, there's, it's gray. You know what I'm trying to say? And so nothing is black and white. That's what I was trying to say. And so everything is a lot more complicated than sometimes we believe it is. And so I think
I am back.
In general, if they were to take power, there really wouldn't be many people that could stand up to them.
May I inject really quickly? Where are we at, question-wise?
David is telling me essentially that I have to think with a more open mind, because if we were to disengage with the value of the economy, that means that essentially we just plunge into a Great Depression, or worse, the actual Great Depression.
Yeah.
True.
Because if we stand up to billionaires and say, hey, billionaires, guess what? Your money isn't worth anything because none of us back it. And then you go to the store and try and buy some food. Your money isn't worth anything either.
Oh, that's right.
And so you would starve. Your family would starve. Everyone would starve. And you would quickly devolve into a state of anarchy, is basically what I was trying to say. And so I think it's important to be open-minded about these kinds of things and these the domino effects they can have. Because it's easy to say, if a billionaire takes power and starts, doing crazy shit, we'll all just stand up to him and say, well, guess what, billionaire, your money isn't worth anything. But then there's a domino effect there, and eventually the economy would stop, and I really believe it would devolve into total anarchy. And so what I was trying to say is just that I think if a billionaire really did have it on their mind to world domination or something like that, that there really wouldn't be many people that could stand up to them.
Yeah.
However, I never iterated my point or my stance on this. I also believe that billionaires should not be gone away. That's awful grammar. I have no problem against billionaires. I think billionaires earned their money and should stay billionaires, and I think that there's prime examples of people that use their billions for good. Which one's the dead one? Steve Jobs or Bill Gates? Whichever one's alive.
Jobs is dead.
Gates is alive?
And
I feel like that's wrong. Is that right?
Steve Jobs is dead because remember pancreatic cancer. Remember the speech? He was like, I
survived
survived
6
pancreatic
years
cancer.
and then he died.
Yeah, you look at Bill Gates. Bill Gates has done really good things with his wealth. Elon Musk has done really good things with his wealth.
I saw a video of a guy learning more about Impossible Burgers and the effects on the economy and like how much like methane production in the air because of cow farts, like that stuff. And then like if we were to reduce what we were like eating, like if we weren't to eat meat and we were to switch to Impossible Burgers, which at this point literally have almost zero taste difference with what's it called?
Beef.
Beef. It's so cost efficient. It's beneficial in almost every single way to switch from actual beef to something that's plant-based. And it's so much more beneficial. I don't remember the reason stated, but the video, like, it stated specific facts, studies, and it really pointed out to me that Impossible Burgers might be the burgers of the future.
Well, this is just a classic example of how
and he fed them to Bill Gates, and just to get him like invested in the Impossible Burgers to like spend his billions in a wise way, a good investment. So that's where I was headed with that. Point.
Yeah, because you totally popped that out of the blue.
No, sorry. I forgot to connect it back to what I was.
I was just wanted to reiterate upon that and say that's a prime example of how the world, but especially the American people, hate change. It's the same. That what you're talking about with the Beyond, the Impossible Burgers, is the exact same thing with our the minting of pennies. It costs more money to mint a penny than a penny is worth. Why do we keep minting pennies? When have you gone to the store and said, and paid for anything in pennies? It's so inefficient. Why do we keep minting pennies? Well, we keep minting them because it's tradition. We've always had pennies, always will. And so it's, you're losing so much money for something that honestly no one cares about. Well, I guess people do care about it. But yeah. So it's that just reminds me of that, and
Yeah.
it's tradition. And so while I agree that the Beyond or Impossible Burgers are a really wise idea, I don't think they'll take hold because people have always eaten meat since the beginning of ever. People have always eaten meat, and I think it's gonna be pretty hard for that to stop.
I like that point with the penny because it just goes because I feel like it pushes what I was trying to say earlier. Because here's the thing, we're putting aside the fact that let's say if everyone did agree on making economy not worth it, who would be on board with that? Like that's such a ludicrous idea. And like you said yourself, people are so willing to stick to their morals because they don't like change or they're lazy as fuck. And I can take part of that. But the thing is, if people are so willing to, everyone's complaining about debt, and if people had the ability to complain about debt and change it by doing nothing, everybody would, because it's like, well, I don't do anything, and we're making our country better, so why wouldn't we? Well, mincing is tradition, and if we were to expend more cost than it was to make something, then we are making ourselves inadvertently weaker as a country, and people should be complaining about that, but it's not, because tradition and our common belief, like our our country's history, isn't a question of whether we should expand or is it worth. It's more of a question of, it's not even a question genuinely at that point, because it's tradition. We're not going to be like, oh yeah, let's get rid of pennies and make stuff more cost effective. No, it's going to stick. It's pennies because pennies, and we're America. And if people are so willing to stick to their morale, then I think that if we were to change, but it's better for the better of America, or not for the better of America, but if we were willing to change, so we keep the one thing that we value the most, equilibrium. And yes, there are different different living. Some people are extensively poor. Some people are barely making their wits ends. People are moderately wealthy. There's somewhere in between those two, or billionaires or someone really wealthy. It struts upon the point that why should we? I'm not gonna lie, I lost my point.
Yep. No, you definitely sounded like you were getting lost.
Yeah, it sounded like you were getting a little confused by what you were saying there.
It happens to me a lot too.
Yeah, no, that's weird to me when it happens, because it's just like, whoa. No,
what was I doing?
Pennies, it just shows how far we're willing to go for something that's so integral to America, right?
Yeah.
And if a billionaire was to threaten that, it shows how we're quick to action to respond to that. Because I'm sure there have been debates why the fuck are we still minting pennies in tradition. There you go.